It is smoothie time.
Before becoming one of the most viewed content creators on the internet with hundreds of millions of views each and every month, the children's show host that so many of us know as Blippi, he was born Stephen J Grossman on May 27th, 1988. Now right off the bat, it looks like Stephen's trying to hide something because it's not entirely clear where Stephen was born and raised, although it was most definitely somewhere in the continental United States. Now as a kid, he grew up watching daytime television hosts like Mr. Rogers, who naturally would leave an incredible mark on his developing mind. Stephen also liked to watch kid shows like Hey Arnold, Rugrats, Ren Stimpy, SpongeBob SquarePants, and many, many more. Now, of course, not all those role models and inspirations were necessarily designed for small children, but Stephen has always had a risque side to his sense of humor, as you're about to find out soon enough.
Characters, a lot of them mean something to me or gave me inspiration, or
Long before carving out a gigantic-sized niche for himself as the internet's most popular childhood entertainer, Blippi, Stephen Grossman joined the United States Air Force in 2006, where he worked as a loadmaster for the C-17 Globemaster airplane at the 4th Nuclear Airlift Squadron. His primary job there was to plan cargo placements by mapping out pallets, tanks, and helicopters to keep everything balanced. Now, Stephen, he served for 2 years before leaving the Air Force in 2008. For the next year, he spent a majority of his time fleshing out his marketing knowledge while working for WPromote as a search engine optimization specialist. Now, something that would serve him well in his future as a content creator. Now, he also learned how to become a filmmaker by earning a degree in cinematography and film production, and that's from UCLA. Now, during this still early period of his life, Stephen traveled back and forth between Washington State and California while working in the film industry. He would direct, he would shoot, and he would edit over 150 commercials for clients like Betty White, Hugh Hefner, as well as Shannon Elizabeth. Now, he also created comedy videos with a series of different characters like Steezy Grossman, Turd Boy, and Underwear Man, which include low-budget and decidedly lowbrow jokes intended to gross out his audience. Think Jackass, but, with more feces, if that's even possible. Stephen even went viral for one unbelievably cringe-inducing video that dropped in 2013 and played off the whole Harlem Shake viral dance craze, only with a decidedly, more explosive ending. Now, if you don't think that video will come back up before the end of this story is over, you'd be kidding yourself. Unfortunately for Stephen, while defecating all over one of his friends, it wouldn't ultimately be what brought him worldwide fame. Now, instead, he'd wind up bringing value to the world by bringing the imagination of children to life. One day in 2014, Stephen was sitting around with his nephew viewing some low-quality children's content about tractors on YouTube when the idea for Blippi just hit him. When asked to discuss this breakthrough moment, Stephen told Studio Fun, "It got me thinking, why don't I create a show for kids like my nephew who love things like tractors, construction, vehicles, fire trucks, garbage trucks, animals, and so on, while incorporating learning into it." Now, having spent much of his earlier life tracking and analyzing metrics, Stephen broke his goals down into small and achievable parts. Now, he started looking into the science of colors and discovered that blue fostered the emotion of trust, while orange represented joy and enthusiasm. And that's how he dreamt up his now trademark look of suspenders, a t-shirt, and a bow tie, which would soon become recognizable to toddlers all over the globe. He also brainstormed about 800 names for the show by placing together random sounds with a careful mixture of consonants and vowels. Then he began narrowing it down, and based upon trademark, copyright, and domain availability, boom, he landed on Blippi. Now, he immediately filed for a USPTO patent, and this would come in handy because he knew that if his costume incorporated different elements like suspenders and a bow tie, then he could merchandise those items on a website, which is precisely what he did.
Just me doing all the editing, the website stuff, every single thing except for
Combining his diverse skill set with his foresight of digital-based platforms is how Stephen Grossman created Blippi, a modern, fun, and curious character that children can easily connect with. Now today, Blippi is regularly watched billions of times across the globe, whether he's messing around with monster trucks, teaching kids how to eat healthier, or flying around in an LAPD helicopter. In fact, the Blippi empire has grown so quickly that Stephen's entire enterprise is now based out of a distribution warehouse out in Las Vegas. I'm actually heading there in a week or two. Maybe we can meet up. Now this is where he generates his content for his main channel, as well as Blippi Toys and the Spanish dub Blippi channel as well.
Genial, es un muy buen dibujo, pero hey, ¿Te molesta si voy a explorar el centro de vida marina?
Then there's the incredible array of Blippi merchandise, everything from dolls, books, action figures, bikes, t-shirts, and a licensing deal with K-Swiss that sells Blippi branded powder blue and orange sneakers. Now that's how Blippi became one of the fastest rising stars on the world's most well-known video sites, striking a deal with Amazon Prime and becoming one of the platform's top 100 all-time stream self-published shows. My God, and that's across the board. Like, we're not even talking children's shows, one of the biggest shows ever. Yeah. So considering the massive level of fame he's thus far been able to achieve, well, is it any surprise that people are now looking to bring Blippi down? Now, there's a popular adage these days that goes a little something like this: the internet never forgets. Now, technically speaking, that's not exactly true, which is why archiving the internet is so important to so many people. But one thing the internet has most definitely not forgotten was when Blippi was trying to get his career off the ground as a gross out comedian.
So I lived in LA for about 6 years or so, and that's when I learned my skill set of videography.
Back in 2019, BuzzFeed, they unearthed Stephen's controversial video of him defecating all over his friends. Now, the one that he tried to scrub clean from the internet soon after creating Blippi, recognizing that, it could come back to haunt him. In fact, Stephen went so far as to distance himself from that creation that he legally changed his name from Stephen Grossman to Stephen John, right? That's putting in the work. Still, the internet, it didn't care. When the news broke about Stephen's questionable past, he immediately hit BuzzFeed with a cease and desist letter asserting copyright on the video. Now, he also filed a takedown request with Google, which previously had linked to a Russian website that hosted the Harlem Shake poop clip. No one asked to discuss the reason behind why he was so protective of this particular piece of content. Well, Stephen would tell Motherboard in an email. Filing a takedown notice hardly qualifies as going to extreme lengths. Then again, the fact that you can call BuzzFeed's piece about a 6-year-old gross-out comedy video a blockbuster investigative report with a straight face may suggest that journalistic standards aren't what they used to be. I can't deny that he's right about that. Now, journalistic standards are most definitely not what they used to be, largely because gossipy stuff is what most audience appear to want these days. Anyway, thanks to Stephen's quick thinking, not to mention his legal representation, the story basically disappeared. Over the next 2 years, Stephen would then focus on getting his personal life where he wanted it. In August of 2021, he proposed to his longtime girlfriend, Ingham, on a beach in Malibu, California. 2 months later, the couple, they announced they were expecting their first child, a baby boy that was born in March of 2022, named Lachlan David John. Now, thankfully, playing Blippi for so long prepared Stephen for fatherhood, and he told Parents.com, "I know what kids' interests are more now, and having met so many kids throughout the years, I feel more in tune with how kids act in their younger years." Now, I'm trying really hard not to include a poop joke there, so let's just move on. Regardless, because he was now a brand new dad, Stephen took a step back from Blippi, while Clayton Grimm, the man who usually portrays the character during live shows, he actually filled in for a few months. Anyway, people weren't happy with the change, so Stephen, he donned his blue and orange costume again soon after. But then all of a sudden, this old video with the defecation and the feces, it came right back into the spotlight. And I guess Stephen might have to take a step back from the limelight or the spotlight one more time until this controversy blows over, or it might spell the end of his creation once and for all. I don't know. I mean, when I was a kid, I liked poop jokes, so maybe they'll understand it. But still, that's how I'm gonna wrap up this video, because this is before they're famous. Before I leave you guys, I have a question for you. What's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done that might come back to haunt you? This is a public platform, but still, I don't know who a lot of you are. A lot of your usernames aren't your real names, so go ham. Tell me some stuff that won't get this video demonetized. What? Yeah, that makes sense. You know what I mean? You can share, but just, if you're talking about D's, use D. Don't talk about DICKs or whatever, right? Now, we've been toying with a new thing on this channel where after a new upload, we drop a previously uploaded video, and in the past, I did a video on the death of Toys R Us. So why don't we insert that here? If you like this Blippi video, you might enjoy that, and I'll see you guys in that video.
Absence of any universally recognized standard or source of news.
Before becoming one of America's most well-known conservative pundits and a mega popular cable television talk show host, recognized for successfully bringing far-right viewpoints and terminology into mainstream politics, Tucker Swanson McNear Carlson, he was born on May 16th, 1969 in San Francisco, California. From the very beginning, Tucker Carlson has lived amongst the elite of American society. Now, his mother, Lisa McNear Lombardi, she was born to a third-generation Miller Harris and after debuting in San Francisco society, well, she met and married Tucker's father, Richard Carlson, who was a television journalist. Now, the two, they would elope in Reno in 1967. 2 years later, well, Tucker arrived, following his brother, Buckley. But, their family, they then moved to Los Angeles, where Richard, he took a job at a local ABC affiliate. Unfortunately, well, the Carlsons' marriage, it grew difficult. And, the station, it wound up firing Richard a few years later. Then in early 1976, well, he moved to San Diego to take on a new television gig. And when he did that, well, he brought his boys with him. Now, according to court records, well, both his parents, they agreed the separation would be temporary, and Richard returned to LA each weekend to work on his marriage. It didn't help a few months later. Well, Tucker and his brothers returned from a trip to Hawaii with their mother, only to discover that Richard, well, he had begun divorce proceedings and he was seeking full custody. Now, the couple, they separated and began fighting it out in the courts, with Richard claiming that Lisa had difficulties with substance abuse and that he had grown concerned over her mental health as well. Also, the way she treated her young boys, arguing that Lisa's own family members were recommending that she not be allowed to visit the children unsupervised. Now, Richard won custody when Tucker was 8. At the hearing, Lisa, she didn't even attend. Now, instead, she left the country and settled in France. Now, when asked to reflect on his early part of his life, well, Tucker, he once told the New Yorker in 2017, "Totally bizarre situation, which I never talk about, because it was actually not really a part of my life at all." Now, on those rare occasions when Tucker wades a little deeper into these emotional waters, well, the story tends to line up with his father's side of events. Now, telling Adam Carolla on his podcast back in 2019, "She was like doing real drugs around us when we were little and getting us to do it, and just like being a nutcase." Now, Tucker's mother, she would eventually pass away in 2011. Now, neither he or his brother ever saw her again after she left to Europe. Now, following the separation, well, Tucker, he moved with his father to La Jolla, California, where he and his brother, they attended primary school. Now, when he was 10, well, his father, she married Patricia Swanson, the heiress to the Swanson Food Company. Afterwards, well, Tucker, he was sent to St. George's School, a private boarding school in Rhode Island. It was there that Tucker, he met his future wife, Susan Andrews, a fellow student and the daughter of the school's headmaster. Now, following graduation, well, Tucker applied for admission into several prestigious universities, but he was turned down by all of them. With the help of his future father-in-law, well, he finally earned acceptance into Trinity College, located in Hartford, Connecticut. Now, according to an interview he once gave to the Columbia Journalism Review, well, Tucker spent most of his days at Trinity College drinking, and upon his graduation in 1991, well, he sought out a career in the CIA. Now, much like what his initial wave of college applications, well, Tucker, he found himself rejected once again. On the advice of his dear old pops, well, Tucker turned to journalism, taking on his first position as a fact checker for the conservative journal known as Policy Review. Now, later, he'd write op-eds for the Arkansas Democratic Gazette, based out of Little Rock, Arkansas. Then in 1995, he joined the staff of the Weekly Standard, a conservative opinion magazine, where he wrote numerous columns, opinion pieces, profiles, and articles. Now, he also freelanced for Esquire, The New Republic, Forbes, Slate, New York Magazine, The Atlantic, and The Wall Street Journal. For a little while there, it looked like Tucker, he might become one of America's most well-respected and potentially well-balanced newspaper reporters. But then he found himself being invited to appear on television, and everything changed. Tucker Carlson's first appearance on television, it happened in 1995 when he was interviewed by CBS newscaster Dan Rather on 48 Hours about the controversial trial of O.J. Simpson. Now, to hear Tucker tell it in his autobiography, well, he stumbled into this opportunity the same way he wound up in journalism, all by accident. One day, while returning to the CBS offices from lunch, well, Tucker was stopped by a receptionist who asked him how much he knew about the O.J. trial. Now, Tucker, he was about to tell her what he knew, next to nothing, but wound up asking her why she was interested instead. Now, when she let him know that the Dan Rather show was looking for a guest, well, he hopped at the chance to get in front of the cameras. Now, after that, well, Tucker, he became a regular talking head on television. 5 years later, he was also asked to appear on CNN to give commentary after the vice presidential debate. His analysis that night, well, it earned him his very own series titled The Spin Room, alongside his co-host, Bill Press. Now, that series, it was canceled shortly thereafter because of, well, low ratings. So in 2001, well, he was invited to co-host another CNN debate show, Crossfire. Now, during an infamous interview with Jon Stewart in 2004, well, the comedian declared that both Tucker and his co-host, Paul Begala, well, they were political hacks who were harming America by engaging in partisan political theater rather than meaningful debate. 3 months later, well, Crossfire, it was canceled by CNN's president, who wound up admitting that he agreed with Stewart's assessment of the show. Now, afterwards, well, Tucker, he moved to MSNBC, where his next series, Tucker, it ran until 2008. A year later, Tucker was hired as a commentator and guest host by the conservative network Fox News. Now, his subsequent appearance, it increased his prominence among conservative pundits and eventually led to the network offering him his own series, which was launched in 2016, and it was called Tucker Carlson Tonight. An immediate sensation, it would quickly become one of the most popular news programs in the history of cable television, drawing in as many as 3.2 million viewers a night. Now, the series, it premiered in the wake of Donald Trump's presidential election, and Carlson wound up supporting many, but not all of Trump's early positions and policies. Now, this includes his ban on immigration from majority Muslim countries, as well as his plan to build a wall along the border between the United States and Mexico. Furthermore, Tucker would defend Trump from claims that he had colluded with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election. He did, however, criticize the former president for the latter, attempting to coerce the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, into announcing an investigation of Trump's political rival, Joe Biden, and his son Hunter, for, the alleged wrongdoing in connection with a Ukraine energy company. Now, Tucker refrained from going so far as to suggest that Trump had committed an impeachable offense, but the U.S. House of Representatives, they definitely disagreed with. Following Trump's defeat in the 2020 presidential election, while many conservative pundits were adamant that the election had been stolen and Tucker Carlson was leading the charge. But did he really believe the things he was saying? For the past 8 years or so, Tucker Carlson, he is seen practically untouchable. But now the most popular television host on American cable news, he finds himself at the center of a firestorm that threatens to ostracize him from both Fox News and Donald Trump. After championing Trump's message on television that the 2020 election was stolen from the conservatives, Tucker now finds his name attached to a court filing by the Dominion Voting System organization that's suing Fox News for $1.6 billion for allowing its stars to broadcast false accusations about rigged voting machines. What's even more interesting is that this document, it contains numerous emails and text messages that detail the private views of Fox's pundits, many of which don't seem to align with what they're saying on TV. For instance, in group chats obtained by Dominion, Fox's biggest names, including Tucker, Sean Hannity, and Laura Ingraham, they all appear to doubt the claims of election fraud that they were pushing. Now, for his own part, Tucker reportedly addressed Trump's claims in private as crazy, cruel, and reckless, as well as destructive. But perhaps of equal concern, at least for Tucker, are some of his further private opinions that have been leaked in regards to Donald Trump. The Dominion lawsuit revealed one particularly juicy text in which Carlson declared about the former president, "I hate him passionately." Now, Tucker also recently criticized Trump on the Full Send podcast for not delivering on some of his campaign promises, possibly as a result of being what Tucker refers to as a little bit autistic. Now, just to be clear, there's no actual proof that Donald Trump is autistic, outside of that one time he stared directly into a solar eclipse. Meanwhile, Tucker, he has spent a great deal of time airing selectively edited footage of the January 6th Capitol riot from 2021 in an attempt to present what happened as far more peaceful than what has been originally reported. Now, despite the recent firestorm of controversies, Tucker remains unapologetic, and he stands by his claims that these new clips, they provide conclusive evidence that the Democrats, they have misinformed the public about what had taken place. Now, in other words, Tucker Carlson, he remains the same person he's always been, at least for the most part of his adult life, a hugely powerful pundit who has survived numerous controversies in the past and will, in all likelihood, continue to survive many more to come. As for what moral outrage he'll be a part of producing next, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. After all, this has been before they're famous. And before I leave you guys, I do have a question for you. If a parent deserted you as a child, but you knew exactly where they went, would you attempt to reconcile the relationship as an adult? I know I would. If my parent was away, I just want to know what part of my genes I got from them. But I guess if they're in somewhere like Iraq, maybe I'd keep my distance. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below.